Ontario has a housing crisis, and that's no secret. It's the result of decades of inaction by previous governments.
The worst housing affordability crisis that our province has ever seen.
So during the pandemic, what happened was there wasn't a lot of inventory. A lot of people didn't want to sell their home because they didn't want random people coming through because of obviously COVID and everything, right? So since there was no inventory, a lot of younger buyers are trying to get into the market. A lot of first-time home buyers are trying to get into the housing market. And because of that, the housing market went on fire. Another factor was the government obviously put out a lot of money into the economy, right? So that was to kind of make it so it doesn't crash, but it kind of had a reverse effect where they put so much in that the housing market and all the assets kind of started rising, not even just housing, even stocks and everything, right? I think they lowered interest rates like crazy during the pandemic, the lowest ever, which made it easier for people to buy, right? So they increased the demand a lot. So now over the last few months, it started to steadily go up, and with that, we're seeing the demand obviously drop. We're seeing pretty big drops based on those areas that went up during the pandemic. A big factor during the pandemic was that a lot of people, they were working from home, so they didn't have to be in the city. So a lot of outer areas were booming. So places like Brock, I don't know if you heard of Brock, Beaverton. No, it's really far out there. Beaverton, even London, Kingston, Oshawa, those are they doubled basically, right? So for them, the value was a bigger space, and since it's a lockdown, you don't really need to commute or everything. Restaurants are closed, you don't need to be there or anything.
We've been hearing that there's a supply issue in regards to housing, and that we're not building as many houses, and people there's a lot of demand for not that much supply. And also right now, as you talked a little bit about the interest rates going up, I suppose the cost of building houses is also going to increase, so that's going to affect the market as well. So
interest rates going up, obviously it's going to affect it, because at the bottom line, your monthly payments will go up, right? Because of that, home prices can't go that high, because you can't, no one can afford a $5,000 a month payment, right? So something that was like 3,000 or whatever would go up. So because of that, the actual home price will go down. We're already seeing that happening from February to April. February was kind of the peak. Since then, after they raised the rates, it started to go down a bit. In terms of supply, so honestly, Canada gets a lot of immigration too, right? So we're getting 400,000 new people every year. So we do need a lot more housing. I think in Ontario, for example, we built 70,000 homes, if I'm not mistaken. The only issue is that the homes that we're building, they're either condos or they're building huge homes far away. So I personally think, this is just my theory, but I think what they need to do is they need to end, there's a type of zoning that we have here in Toronto, which is really dumb, but it's 70% of Toronto has this, it's called yellow belt zoning. So it's you can only build single family homes. So it doesn't make sense to build single family homes right beside subway stations, for example, right? So what we're getting is we're getting mansions beside subway stations where people could actually I don't know if you said you've been to Montreal a few times, right?
Yes.
So you would see those 3-4 floor multiplexes. We need more of those to make housing better, right? We need more of those near transit. We need to end that zoning where it's kind of excluding people and then making people live farther away, and then increases traffic and everything. Where if we make it more dense, and I'm not talking about high-rise towers, because that's kind of too much as well. It's more medium density. We need 3 to 4 floor type of homes, which will actually even more townhouses, more mixed type of housing that will help people, right?
One thing I want to get your opinion on is a lot of people don't like those zoning laws, because they kind of increase the value of their home, right? Because if you're in a market where there's not a lot of supply, and there's a lot of demand, your house becomes more valuable to you. And for many people, their houses are their wealth. They build their wealth through their houses and their condos and whatnot. So you're thinking of your retirement, and you're saving as being in the house instead of the house being just the house where you live.
And I think that's a huge issue in Toronto as well. It's called NIMBYism. So it's not in my backyard. I don't know if you've heard of that. But basically in Toronto, it's huge because it's they don't want like even like multiplexes near them, or like they just want their single family neighborhood. They don't want their values to drop because obviously they're saving up for retirement and everything. But it's like we got to look at the bigger picture, right? This is not actually supposed to be an investment, right? It should be a place, like everybody should have a place to live initially, and then after that, if there is like place for investment, that would be where it's like you can get cash flow, like monthly cash flow, instead of looking for the appreciation aspect of it, right? So there is opportunity for that, where it's like you can own like a few type of multiplexes, and then you get that monthly cash flow without expecting that appreciation. So that happens like all over the world. But here it's like we've become so addicted to that appreciation, where it's like kind of getting ridiculous. Like where can it go from here, right? Like it's like you're buying a home for 2 million or 1 million. It's like you expect it to go like 3. Like who can afford these homes, right?
I was looking at the report from the housing task force, and they talked about how the past 10 years housing prices have almost tripled, right? And then you look at the rise of income, income is not catching up to the housing prices, right? And then so one thing the Doug government is trying to tackle is, you know, foreign ownership, vacant homes. So by raising those taxes, they think that could help solve the issue. Another thing they're talking about is cutting the red tape for, you know, developers. Yeah. So when you look at, let's say, those 3 things, do you think that could help fix the affordability issue, or
I feel like those things that they're talking about, especially like the foreign buyers, I think that's just a scapegoat, right? So I personally think like foreign buyers, they can't vote for you. So that's why they're like, okay, this would be a good scapegoat, but they don't represent a lot of the buyers, to be honest. Like maybe like 2 to 3%. So it won't have as much of an effect as people think it is. It's just a way for them to be like, oh, we're doing something here, right? At the end of the day, like the main thing that they should be doing is like ending that type of zoning, it'll make the cities better too. It would actually make Toronto a better city. Like if it didn't have all these single family homes like on all these homes, like on these major streets, right? Make it easier to put in transit. It would make traffic better. It would make quality of life better. But instead they're doing things like and like, you know, like banning foreign buyers and like trying to make it seem like they're doing something, right? But I don't think that's really, the vacant tax isn't that bad, but at the end of the day, if they just do this, they don't have to do things like that, right? It's like almost like putting like tape over, like, you know what I mean? Instead of just fixing the whole problem.
In terms of young people like myself, that some of them kind of feel disenfranchised by the market. They realistically, I was just looking at a survey, like a lot of young people,
they don't think they can buy.
They don't think they'll be able to buy a home, right? So your thoughts on that as young people, you know, either there's Gen Z or young millennials trying to get into the market and feel like they can't get in. Like, what would be your tips for them taking those little steps to get to that point?
So I would say, like, honestly, it is hard, and I get it. Like, it's so hard to get into the market now, right? But what I would suggest is obviously to try and save up. Like instead of spending too much on other things, maybe trying to buy with friends, as well as like even buying a type of home that they don't like expect to be their dream home, but just getting your foot into the door. Like what I always say is like, if you get into the market, you can at least go up and down with it, right? So at least if you have like even a condo unit, or if you even have some like a smaller space that you like, that's not in the location that you fully desire, at least you're kind of going with the market. And then going forward, when you start building equity, you can take that equity and then sell this place and buy into what you actually want to buy.
What would you like to see in terms of sustainability in real estate?
So I think like sustainability is like a huge thing like for everybody. So there's no point having a home if the world's gonna like, you know what I mean? Like it's gonna get like, in the next few years, we're gonna see a lot more climate change, like things happening. Like I know Toronto is safe from a lot of things, but most of the world isn't. So whether it's like floods or whether it's like rising temperatures, there's so many factors that are going to be happening to the world. So I think like everybody has a key part to play in sustainability. So for me, it's like while I was doing real estate, I'm like, this is a way for me to kind of give back, where it's like every time I help somebody buy or sell the home, I plant 100 trees. So that way I can look back and be like, wow, like I actually planted like thousands of trees. Like it's like, at least I try to do something to kind of combat this. And I think personally though, like I think more new developers should get into sustainable projects as well, making sure people like are like net zero. So basically don't put out carbon when they have their home, and it gets recycled. Like if we're building new homes, we might as well do it like that, right? Like there's no point building homes without that aspect, but obviously most people aren't doing that. Cost is another issue too for them, but I hope to see more of that in the future. Another thing I mentioned was even with that yellow belt thing, that would help a lot with sustainability. Like there's no reason for somebody to live like 2 hours away and drive every day, right? If you make it more dense, it's better for the planet, it's better for everybody involved, it's better for like the people themselves. They get to walk more, they get everything's near them. Like it just makes so much more sense.